Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا واكرمنا ولا تهنا وعطنا ولا تحرمنا واثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا وارض عنا. اللهم انا نسالك خير هذا اليوم فتحه ونصره ونوره وبركته وهداه ونعوذ بك من شره بشر ما فيه وشر ما قبله وشر ما بعده ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, today will be our final broadcast for the semester, according to my knowledge, right? That being the case, initially I had the urge to actually try to just rush through the remainder of the text, but then I decided, well, it probably would be better that we would simply delay part of the text for the spring semester because there's so much benefit to be taken from the discussion of the maqamats, which they will come up later, that we'll be talking about. And each particular maqam from the maqamats, it rightfully deserves the appropriate amount of explanation and commentary. So again, that this particular course has been titled An Introduction to Islamic Virtual Ethics. And the aim of virtual ethics is to make an individual a better person. That we begin with the understanding that the human being is not complete just simply by growing up physically. That we go through phases, as we know, that we start off as a single-celled being, and then we develop physically and physiologically, anatomically. We go through our stages of maturity, our brains develop, among other things. But we believe as well that the human being is not complete or not fully what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it to be until it also conforms to a certain type of behavioral standard that the Creator had in mind when He created all of us. So we believe that it is part of the human nature to return to what is referred to as the fitrah, or the primordial state, as some have translated the term, or we could say to return to a state of innocence that we once enjoyed prior to being cast out of the garden and sent down to this earth. Even though we know that we will never completely overcome our urges in this life because of the fact that our souls have been placed into the flesh that it inheres in, and that in itself is a constant nuisance to, or causes us constant frustration in trying to become complete beings or perfect beings in this particular life. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards because of the effort that we make, the relative effort, in trying to become better people. So the human being, as stated once before, when we look at the human being and compare the human being to other important creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or two other important categories of creation, the category of the angelic being, and then the bestial, or the non-human animals, that particular category, that the human being falls in between the two of them, that the human being is both angelic and both it is bestial in nature, that the angels, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them an intellectual appetite, and they incline towards noble and lofty things, whereas other non-human animals, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made their nature in such a way that they are led or steered by their appetites. They're steered by their appetites, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a certain amount of that. So fundamentally, the human being has two basic appetites. We can say we have a sensitive appetite, and then we have an intellectual appetite. The sensitive appetite it can be subcategories, or even broken down to two categories as well. in the language of the Sufiya, they would say that it's the category of, we have the quwwat al-shahwa and quwwat al-ghadab, we call the concupiscible appetite, and then you have the irascible appetite. And then, of course, this is similar to some ancient Greek sort of ideas about morality as well. But the sensitive appetite has these two different aspects to it. And then we have the intellectual appetite. And so in our lives, we have a number of different challenges that help us, or that could aid us, of course, of becoming better people. But at the same time, it all depends on our level of awareness. But often those particular things, they stand as an obstruction to our attempts to become better people. So many of the scholars say that there are 4 different things we need to be aware of and be cautious about. And one is the dunya itself, this world, because there are many things that that dazzle us, and they attract us in this world. And so we have to be careful about how much we indulge in this world, how much we develop an attachment to worldly things, because those are things which can lead to our destruction, it can lead to our damnation. So the dunya is one. A second is the nafs itself, the self, the human self, the ego, the appetite, our lusts, our whims, all of those different things, which would fall under the general category of the nafs. And then we have the hawa, which is, we say, well, the nafs would be our ego, then the hawa would be our carnal appetites, and then the shaytan himself, shaytan, iblis. So the dunya, the ego, the lower self, and then you have the lower self we call the hawa, and then we have iblis, 4 enemies that we have to be constantly aware of in terms of how they are affecting our consciousness and how they may be influencing our actions. Now, Imam al-Muhasibi, he highlights that many of the scholars, not just Imam al-Muhasibi, but one of the statements of Imam al-Muhasibi was that in his Risale al-Mustarshideen, he said that, hasib nafsaka ala kulli khatra, that one is to reckon oneself for every thought. Reckon oneself for every thought that one has. And so one of the last lessons we talked about what we call the khawatir, the different forms of thoughts. Now, the human being is compelled to think in some regards. That is to say that it's part of our nature. As long as we are conscious, as long as we are awake, we are thinking and we have thoughts. And in that sense, the fact that thoughts must occur in our heads as long as we are awake, it is an aspect of us which is beyond our control. Just as the beating of our heart is an aspect of ourselves which is beyond our control. However, we can do things to suppress thought. We can do things that can help us to change the thoughts that go into our minds, because there is a particular continuum that exists with regard to virtue, and that if our thoughts are bad thoughts, then eventually they can lead to bad actions. And once they lead to bad actions, then they can lead to bad habits. And once they become bad habits, then they become second nature. And once this thing becomes second nature, then it's difficult to give it up if it is something destructive, if it's a destructive behavior. And so this particular principle can be applied in so many different areas. Not just when we talk about spirituality, we talk about virtue, but even in the area of like this mundane or things that we typically don't refer to as or think of as things that would be the result or the root cause of the problems are spiritual or issues of the spirit. So, for instance, drug addiction. For instance, people have problems with drug addiction, and the same principle applies. It's like the average person, when he or she first starts to smoke cigarettes or drink beer, it's not like something that is enjoyable to them at the start of it. People have many reasons why they do those different things, but if anything, it's the opposite. It's repulsive. Beer doesn't taste good. It doesn't, right? But people develop a taste for it, you see, and then it starts to have a certain type of sweetness about it that they like. Smoking cigarettes as well. People cough, you choke the first time you inhale smoke, but after time, people they develop a liking for it and even a dependency upon it as well. So it's like alcoholism, addiction to cigarettes or other types of drugs, it is the same principle which is being applied. So when we start talking about our behaviors, that you may, when you were younger, you may have, not liked the idea of talking bad about people, especially if you were told and taught that backbiting was wrong. My daughter is constantly like on my case, or because she's learning these things. You hear something, you shouldn't talk about people. And for me, I don't feel like I'm talking about something, but certain subtle things that we say on a regular basis, they could actually be interpreted as forms of backbiting. So you have children there out of their innocence, and they'll sort of call your attention to those particular issues. You see, but it may begin as when you're young, you have that innocence, and you can perceive of them. And so you can actually grow up in a virtuous state. On the other hand, if let's say if a time comes where, God forbid, that, and it happens to most of us, is that, you start off innocent and then all of a sudden you just feel, okay, well, you find a way to justify your actions and you become addicted to backbiting. You become addicted. Some people are addicted to lying. They're compulsive liars, among other things, So remember, but it goes back to thoughts. It starts with thoughts. And then one thing that is very useful, I find, amongst the writings of the Sufiya, or the people, the scholars of suluk or behavioral science, is that when they talk about thoughts, they divide them into 4 different types. And this is also spoken about before, but the 4 khawatar, and one of them is called khatar al-nafsani. One particular type of thought, it originates from the self. It's called khatar al-nafsani, or also referred to as the hajis, or the hawajis in the plural form of them, right? So some thoughts originate from within ourselves, right? And then there's a khatar al-rabbani. Then there is a godly thought, or a thought which is produced by the Creator. Now, one thing that is distinct about these 2 different types of thoughts, according to these particular spiritual masters, is that the way that you know that these thoughts are from one or the other is that both of them are very fixed in nature. That, this thought comes to you and they stay with you, all right? Be it good or bad, right? They stay with you, right? They don't they don't come then go, come back. That a khatar rabbani and a khatar nafsani, it comes and it stays with you. For instance, the nafs, when the nafs gets a thought and wants something and doesn't give it up until it has it, until its desire is fulfilled. It's usually a sign that is originally coming from the nafs. So you have to be very careful about your nafs, that you can't trust your nafs. Like it said that the nafs always lies, but the heart never. But the heart always tells the truth. The nafs always lies, and the heart, the qalb, always tells the truth. That we know our hearts, when we find resistance to a thing, to a thought, or to an impulse, right? Often it's because because our heart is trying to get us to become conformed to the divine intent, realistically. So like we do something bad, and then we find a way to justify it, but we just feel like we have to do it. Now, of course, some of those thoughts come from shaytan and then from the angels as well. So the 2 fundamental types of thoughts is khatar rabbani and khatar nafsani. And then the other 2 types of thought, or khawatar, he mentions khatar al-shaytani wal-malaki. And what is distinct about the 2 of them is that they're mutaraddidan, that they come and go. That we get a thought to do something good, then we forget it, and then it comes back again later, and that's usually from the malik, right? Or something evil, it comes and then it goes back, it leaves, comes and it leaves. That's from the shaytan, right? So understanding our nature is extremely important. So if this is correct, that these are the different types of thoughts that are out there, it's important for us to know that when we are pushed to do a particular thing, that we know what the source of it is, inshallah, right? So the nafs, we know, also has a number of different states that it can be in. That there are 3 fundamental states that the self can be in. The nafs is one type of nafs, is called the nafs al-ammara. And many of you, I'm quite sure you've heard this before. The nafs al-ammara, right? this is the soul which, the commanding soul, that orders us to do, or the self, the commanding self, that which orders us or induces us to do evil things, right? The nafs al-ammara, right? This is the state of many people, that their disposition is of this particular state. They don't have much control over themselves, the nafs al-ammara. Right, but some people actually may have control over themselves, but their nafs is still inclining towards evil. And so we have to be very careful about that as well. So the second type of self is called nafs al-lawama, the self-reproaching soul. And it's in the Quran as well. Inna nafs al-ammaratun bisu, la uqsimu bi yawm al-qiyamah, wa la uqsimu bin nafs al-lawama. That Allah, He sweared by the self-reproaching soul. And this is that particular soul which is afflicted with guilt or remorse or the conscience of the individual bothers them when they're inclining towards evil or they embark upon evil. That is a healthy state, but of course it's not the best state to be in, but it's on the right path towards health. And then the third type of soul is called nafs al-mutma'inna, which is the relaxed or the fulfilled soul. You can see that soul which has overcome sin, has overcome has overcome sin, and actually is at a state now where they have good control over itself. And so this is what is referred to in Surah Al-Fajr when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna, O you self, O you contented soul, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah, to return to your Lord satisfied and satisfied with, right? So satisfied with your Lord and also receiving satisfaction from your Lord. So the nafs al-mutma'inna is the third state of the soul. So a person's heart can be healthy, it can be sick, or it can be dead. And there are a lot of people with very dead hearts. We have people out here who are inciting evil against a lot of different people. They're creating stereotypes about people. They're trying to incite people to attack Muslims. Some people, have no conscience. They just, to me, I would say it's an example of a dead heart, realistically, or at least a sick heart. Now, the sick heart has an opportunity to do something, to repent, right? But you have some people whose hearts are so dead because of their not seeing anything other than this dunya, that it's all about, this is their Jannah, this is their paradise, and so they do anything to retain it. And people want to act as God. At any rate, that was more of we can say it's more of sort of like a review of some things. And so the last verses we covered were يحاسب النفس على إنفاسي يزين خاطر بالقسطاس, that one should reckon the soul for all breath taken and weigh one's thoughts with fair balance. So muhasabah, so we started our days today, and we woke up and we said, "Oh, you hands, watch what you touch, watch what you hit, watch what you strike, watch what you put down, watch what you pick up. Oh, eyes, watch what you look upon, right? Try your best to protect yourself from things that are unlawful." Right, same thing. And we gave it advice. Our ears and our feet, our stomach. Watch what you eat. Right, what you put in, what you indulge. Be very careful about your diet. Right, don't eat haram. Right, so we started our days off with that. So, and at least this is the recommendation to do that. So when we get the impulse to engage in those wrong type of discussions, the impulse to harm people's honor, not harm people physically, then hopefully it will help us to not do so. And saying that we to weigh our thoughts with fair balance, rather is to say we weigh our thoughts according to the shara, according to Islamic law. So whatever the shara commands us to do, then do it. If we find that the shara does not command us to do anything, then we avoid it, inshallah. And then he goes on, he says, وَيَحْفَظُ الْمَفْرُوضَ رَأْسَ الْمَالِ وَالنَّفْلَ رِبْحَهُ بِهِ يُوَالِ. And one should guard the obligations, which are one's capital, and guard voluntary acts through which profit will be continuous. So again, one should guard the obligations, يحفظ المفروض. The obligations, what he means by this are those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made compulsory upon the individual, right? So if I'm not praying my 5, especially if I'm not getting them for fajr, and then I'm claiming I'm Sufi, for instance, right? I'm claiming I've arrived, right? And I don't get them for fajr. It's like, I don't know what type of Sufi that could possibly be, right? But guard your mafrood, or even say a Muslim as well, a believer, right? Yahfid mafrood, your 5 prayers, your fast Ramadan, your Hajj, your zakat, all those different things. Why? Because it said this is your capital. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the Quran, He utilizes the language of commerce in order to encourage the believers to do good, and to do good for their own sake, not for His sake, but to do good, all throughout the Quran. And because this is a type of thing, commerce is most universal aspect of human interactivity is trade, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He appeals to the human being through the language of trade. So for instance, in one surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, hal adullukum ala tijaratin tunjikum min adhabin alim. O you who believe, shall I mention to you a deal which will spare you from a painful punishment? Now, of course, we want Allah. What is this deal that we're making? It said, "Tu'minuna billahi wa rasulihi wa tujahiduna fi sabilillahi bi amwalikum wa anfusikum." So here's the deal: you will believe in Allah and His Messenger, and you will struggle against yourself and your wealth in the way of God. ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. That is better for you if you but knew. And so, if you do so, what's the response? يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَيُدْخِلْكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ وَمَسَاكِنَ طَيِّبَةً فِي جَنَّاتِ عَدْنٍ. If you do so, He'll forgive you your sins and enter you into gardens beneath which rivers flow, and He will grant you nice homes, right, in the gardens of Eden. ذَلِكَ الْفَضْلُ الْمُبِينُ وَأُخْرَى تُحِبُّونَهَا. And then another thing that you would love, and He also offers something else. نَصْرٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ فَتْحٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَتْحٌ قَرِيبٌ. نَصْرٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَتْحٌ قَرِيبٌ. That help from Allah and a clear, a victory soon to be achieved. Right, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you do this and then I'll do that. So all throughout the Quran, who will lend to Allah a beautiful loan, and He will multiply it among other things. So it utilizes the language of commerce, the language of trade. And so an individual is in business, you can't start a business without capital. Right, and capital is your seed money. So the fara'id, they're your seed money. That's what it is. Your seed money. I wanna start open up a cafe, right? But I need money to open up. I need capital to open up the cafe, right? So it starts there with the fara'id. But another benefit of the fara'id is that through the fara'id one comes close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? As in the Hadith Qudsi, "Man 'ada li waliyan faqad adhantuhu bil harb." That whoever makes himself an enemy of a friend of mine, then I have declared war on him. I declare war on that person. وَمَا تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبَّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا افْتَرَضْتُهُ عَلَيْهِ. And my servant does not draw near to me with anything more beloved to me than what I've made compulsory upon him. Right. So if you want closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then fulfill your obligations. Right. Pray your 5 on time. Right. Try to have presence of heart. Fast the proper fast, or fast in the way is appropriate to fast it, among other things, So يَحْفَظُ الْمَفْرُوضَ رَأْسَ الْمَالِ. That one is to guard one's obligations, which are one's capital. So you have to have capital. And guard voluntary acts through which profit will be continuous. وَرَأْسَ الْمَالِ وَنَفْذَ رَبْحُهُ بِهِ يُوَارِ. Right. So if the fara'id is the seed money, then the voluntary or the supererogatory acts, they are the profit. So why did I open up the cafe? Because I want to make money. So I need to have money in order to make it. I had some money and then I got it, alhamdulillah. And then through that, I was able to earn back the money that I put into the business, and then more on top of that. That's my profit, that's my ribh, that's my gain, right? So the nawafil are your gain. So if the fara'id, they bring you close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what do the nawafil do? What do they do? Who knows? What does the hadith say? The hadith goes on to say what? They complete your fara'id, of course. You know, that's one thing we know that they do that. But according to the hadith Qudsi, you know, ما تقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إليه مما افترضته عليه ولا يزال عبدي يتقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه. Right. And then my servant will continue to draw near to me with the nawafil, with voluntary acts, until I love him or I love her. Right. So if we want Allah's love, right? And we all have Allah's love. You know, it doesn't mean it's not saying it's a condition. That Allah, everyone has Allah's love. We have His compassion. We have all those different things already. But this is a special type of love, right? That if you want my special love, then continue to do voluntary acts. Don't just say, as the man who came and questioned the Prophet ﷺ, you know, what if I only do the maktubat or sumtu Ramadan, or, you know, and halatu halal wa haramtu haram, right? أدخل الجنة فلم أزل على ذلك أدخل الجنة. That, you know, many scholars say that fundamentally the man was just simply asking a question. He wasn't necessarily this idea that he only wanted to do the fara'id, but rather it was a question for, it's like seeking, you know, just knowledge. He wants to deepen his knowledge. You know, what is more important? And then if a person is guarding one's fara'id, then they naturally start to add the nawafil after that as well. If they truly love Allah and His Messenger, they want to emulate the Prophet ﷺ. But this is fundamentally what occurs. So like your fara'id, they are your capital, and your nawafil are your, they constitute your profit. And then he goes on, he says, وَيُكْثِرُ الذِّكْرَ بِصَفِّ لُبِّهِ وَيُكْثِرُ الذِّكْرَ بِصَفِّ لُبِّهِ وَالْعَوْنُ فِي جَمِيعِ ذَابِ رَبِّهِ. One should engage in much remembrance of God with purity of his heart, and help in all of this comes from one's Lord. And help in all of this comes from one's Lord. Right, so dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, which is an important aspect to our lives as Muslims. You know, it's not just in that good important aspect to the lives as Sufis, right? Some people say it is it lives Muslims, you see. Because saying Sufi is not, you know, it's not saying like something other than Muslim, right? But as Muslims, you know, these teachings come from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. They come right from the Quran. اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا. All throughout the Quran, there's a mention of dhikr. Do dhikr. ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. By the remembrance of God, do hearts find contentment. That we find this all throughout the Quran. وَأَقِمُ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. Right? And establish the salat for my remembrance. You know. So the dhikr itself, it can translate as remembrance, or it can also translate as mention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the broader of the two is that one which means to actually mention Allah. And it could, if I mention God, then I have to remember Him first. So there's the broader of the two, and a more appropriate sort of translation in many cases. The word dhikr actually in the Arabic language fundamentally is synonymous with the word sharaf. Right? Sharaf means nobility. Right? And so Allah sent down the Quran, fihi dhikrukum, wherein there is your dhikr is found in the Quran. Means sharafakum, your nobility is found in the Quran. Right? وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. And we have elevated your dhikr, your mention, that is your nobility. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, his nobility was elevated in the Quran by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an extremely important part, especially with regard to one's aim to overcome thoughts that are destructive. Right. So if certain thoughts we can't control, well, some thoughts are good and others are evil. You know, some thoughts are for some people are difficult to control, but we combat them. We combat those thoughts through dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if at the beginning, at the start of it, we don't taste the sweetness of it. It really doesn't matter that you don't taste the sweetness of dhikr from the very beginning. That we should we should do dhikr in spite of it all, that over time. If we don't taste the sweetness of it, at least we should do dhikr with the intention that we are showing gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the opportunity and inspiring us to actually to mention His name. That I do dhikr with that thought in mind, that Allah, He guided me to an opportunity to come closer to Him, right? So that's another type of intention that you can have, so if you're not tasting the sweetness of it. But I think most people taste the sweetness of dhikr, even atheists, because, Sam Harris, he has these posts and he talks about one of the things he does for relaxation is to listen to Quran and listen to the dhikr of the Sufis, and and he has these posts on his blog, believe it or not, So it's, atheists, but people, you feel the benefit of dhikr, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that no one really could deny that it's something beautiful and it's something that has an impact on the spiritual state of the person when dhikr is done, especially if it's done in the most beautiful fashion. There's one scholar who is quoted as having said, "Man lam yakun lahu wirdun fahuwa qird." Right. Whoever doesn't have a wird is an ape. So a wird, a wird is, you can roughly translate it as a litany, right? A litany of, or a formula which is one takes with the aim of realizing the remembrance of God in one's life. Now, a wird can take a number of different forms. It's not just simply what we call dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so la ilaha illallah, subhanallah, wallahu akbar. We already do dhikr after salah, right? We have the 33, 33, 33. Some hadiths that mention 999. You have la ilaha illallah 100 times. You have sometimes recite ayatul kursi. When the poor companions came to the Prophet ﷺ and complained that the rich people, they're getting away with all the reward, the sadaqah, the Prophet ﷺ tells them, here's something that you can outdo them in. And he gave them, do tasbihat and do tahmidat, do tahlilat. He gave them things to do, right, to benefit them. So dhikr is part of Islam. It's part of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. There's no way of denying it. And there's actually a sound hadith where the Prophet ﷺ is quoted as having said, إِذَا مَرَرْتُمْ بِرِيَاضِ الْجَنَّةِ فَارْتَعُوا فِيهَا. That when you pass by the gardens of heaven, then graze therein. وَقِيلَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَمَا هِيَ رِيَاضُ الْجَنَّةِ. And it was said to him, and what are these gardens of paradise? And he said, حِلَقُ الذِّكْر. They are the circles of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the circles of dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are hadiths that talk about how the angels, they travel throughout the earth and they're looking for majalis al-dhikr, those particular assemblies where people are gathered to mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a hadith, مَا شَمَعَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بُيُوتِ اللَّهِ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَيَتَدَارَسُونَهُ بَيْنَهُم إِلَّا نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّكِينَةُ إِلَى آخِرِهِ. That that no people come together to recite the book of Allah and to study it with one another, except that tranquility befalls them, among other things. It goes on, and there's another narration that no people come together to do the dhikr of Allah. Similar hadith, but instead of saying to study the Quran, but to do the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, so your dhikr can be with your tongue, of course your dhikr is with your heart as well, but other forms of awrad, another type of wird or litany, could be, you can have a wird of salawats. Right, you can have a commitment to pray a certain number of nafila every yom. I'm mixing English with Arabic. It's every day that you can have a have a litany of prayers, of salawats. I'm going to pray 100 nafila every day. That could be some people's practice. And some people, there are people who still do things like that. You can have a litany of Quran, tilawat al-Quran. That's another thing. That like in countries like Morocco, there's a tradition that has been around for some time now, where in the morning after Fajr, there's in the masjid, there's a congregational gathering for the recitation of half of a juz of Quran. So at 1/60th of after at the end of the prayer, after Fajr, after Subh, and then they do it again after Maghrib, so that 1/30th of the Quran is completed every day, and in every month the Quran itself is completed in almost every single masjid you go to in the country that you see this practice. It's a wird that they have. If that's something that we can as well, we can do. You can have a wird of study, a study wird. That every single day we get together, we're going to study at this time. That in itself also counts as a form of wird. So often people, when they understand wird, they think only sitting down, singing a nasheed or things like that, right? And the nasheed, even like once a week, right? We know that certain people, places, they do that like once a week. People gather. That is a form of wird, except that it's not a daily one. Now, for, of course, the scholars of this particular science, they would prefer that people do things every single day. There's something you do every day that will help you to take advantage of your time. Imam al-Ghazali, I wanted to share with you a quote from Imam Ghazali, and he talks about the importance of time. And so he goes on to say that awqatuka umrak. He said your time is your life. Your time is your life. Wa umruka ra'su malik. And your life is your capital. Your time is your life, and your life is your capital. وَعَلَيْهِ أَصْلُ تِجَارَتِكَ. And upon it is built the foundation, or it is the foundation of your trail, of your spiritual trade, of your trade with Allah, of your commerce, your dealings with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So your life itself. وَبِهِ وُصُولُكَ إِلَى نَعِيمِ الْأَبَدِ فِي جِوَارِ اللَّهِ. And by it, you will arrive into the bliss of the hereafter in the proximity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَكُلُّ نَفَسٍ مِّنْ أَنفَاسِكَ جَوْهَرَةٌ لَا قِيمَةَ لَهُ. So every breath that you take is a priceless jewel. Every breath that you take is a priceless jewel. إِذْ لَا عِوَضَ لَهُ. Because there is no substitute for it. So once one breath is taken, another one comes. You can't go back to the first one. Once it's out, it's out. Every breath you take is a priceless jewel. وَإِذَا فَاتَ فَلَا عَوْدَ لَهُ. So once it's out, it doesn't return. So once it's out, it doesn't return. So dhikr is an extremely important thing. And also just remembering that when we die, nothing goes with us. Nothing goes with us. And all we have is our work. That's all we have. You see, nothing. None of our riches, none of our family, nothing. And I just want to, before opening up things, I want to share with you just two hadith in this particular regard. One hadith on the authority of the Prophet ﷺ. لا تزول قدما ابن آدم يوم القيامة من عند ربه عز وجل حتى يسأله عن خمس. That the feet of the son of Adam, of the child of Adam, will not move forward on the day of resurrection from his Lord until he asks him about five things. عن عمره فيما أفناه. So he asks him about his life and how he spent it. وعن شبابه فيما أبلاه. And about his youth and how he wasted it and what he wasted it. وعن ماله من أين اكتسبه وفيما أنفقه. And about his wealth, from where he acquired it and where he spent it and how he spent it. وما عمل فيما علم. And then lastly, he will ask us about to what extent did we act upon our knowledge? To what extent did we act upon what we knew? Right. So about your life and how you spent it, about your youth and how you may have wasted it, and about your wealth and how you acquired it and spent it, and about to what extent that you acted upon what you know. And in another hadith he says, يقول ابن آدم مالي مالي وهل لك من مالك إلا ما أكلت فأفنيت وتصدقت فأمضيت وما لبست فأبليت. So the son of Adam says, my wealth, my property, my property this, my property that. I got this, I got that, right? This is mine, right? The son of Adam says this. Then he says, but do you have any wealth other than what you have eaten and passed it out, right? You've eaten and digested and wasted. وَتَصَدَّقْتَ فَأَمْضَيْتَ, or what you have given in charity and passed it over, transferred over to others, or what you have worn and worn out, your clothing. So basically, what wealth do you have? Right, your clothing, what happens? It wears out. Your food, it turns and transforms into something else, and then it turns into waste. And charity, you give, it transfers, this wealth transferred from yourself to someone else. That's really the only wealth you truly have in this life. But in the hereafter, the only thing that will mean anything will be your works. And that's the only thing that you're taking along with you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So at any rate, remember that the mafrood, that the fara'id, that's our capital, our nawafil is our profit, and that we have to employ the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives. So that's what I would say would be the overall lesson for today. And be wary as well, of course, of our thoughts, because our thoughts can be dangerous and they lead to destructive actions. And those actions, if they're repeated, become dispositions. And then once something is a disposition, it becomes a second nature, and it becomes difficult for you to let go of that thing. And then ultimately what happens is that as time goes, that you become one of the awliya of shaytan, and to the extent that you won't even realize that you are misled. You won't realize that you're misled. The curse of Allah descends upon you. And the curse of Allah means to be distanced from Allah's mercy. And when you're distant from Allah's mercy, then you don't know. You can't even tell that you're misguided. You're in darkness at that moment. You think you're guided. And this is one of the main reasons that our scholars have always discouraged people from cursing the governors, invoking the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on one's oppressive, tyrant governors. Because if they're already tyrannical, if we're cursing them, the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to become more tyrannical, because remove all light if Allah answers our prayer, Allah is going to remove all light from their hearts, right? No more compassion, right? And then they're just going to become worse than what they were before, you see. Rather, we ask Allah to rectify them. That's what, at least for the Ahlul Sunnah, that's been our position historically, is to make a dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us good governors and make them people of salah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. So if there are any questions, the floor is open. Inshallah. Tafadhal. Well, the question is, should we make our own wird, or should we restrict ourselves to what has already been tried and tested? Well, we have awrad that have been recommended to us by the Prophet ﷺ, and not every wird will work for every single individual. Because the aim of the wird is for us, of course, to become deepened in our spirituality, but that often won't happen if we are not constant upon the application of that wird or the use of that wird. So if I choose a wird, which is, let's say, my daily schedule, perhaps, or my habits, finds it difficult to accommodate the wird, right? Because it's like you have to accommodate the wird as well. Then I may not do it anymore. That the best and most beloved deeds to Allah are those that are done more constantly, even if it's a small amount. For some people can read, a wird of half a Quran a day. There's some people in the world who do things. Some people finish the Quran within a couple of days. I mean, that's their wird. I mean, I've met people like this, and that's all they do. I mean, there's a friend of mine, his father, Allah yarhamu, in Morocco, his father, like every time we got together, we gathered. Anytime there was a home invite or something like that, all he did was just he remained silent, and everybody as they talked, and he would, if he talked, people were just talking about nothing, he would just stop everybody and say, hey, let's recite Quran, right? And then everybody would just start reciting Quran together, and that's all he did outside of when he was with people, he was reciting Quran, and then when people were just talking about everything, he said, let's recite Quran. And when he was by himself, he was reciting Quran. That's all he did every single day. So I mean, there are people who are like that. So if I say, okay, I'm going to finish the Quran every couple of days, I say, well, that may be too much for you. Likely it's too much for you. But let's say if you can't do a 30th of the Quran today, maybe you can do a 60th of the Quran today. Perhaps you can do, half of that is, 120th of the Quran a day. But you just have to choose your times as well. Perhaps you do part of it in the morning after Fajr, then part of it after Maghrib, or when you wake up, or part of it when you go to sleep. That's extremely important. And so the wird is not one particular wird, or even, a number of them are not, perhaps may not be the most appropriate for every single person. You see, so you may have to do wirds of salah. You may do that. That may be your wird as well. I'm going to pray a certain number of prayers every single day. But you just don't want to overwhelm yourself. That's the whole point is that you want to be constant in it. You see, so limiting yourself to what has already been time tested. That's kind of, to me, I find that sort of problematic to say something being time tested, in the sense that anything that contains mention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will work for you, you see. But the idea that certain types of awrads are time tested, what does that really mean? I don't really know exactly what that would really mean. But I do know is that the Prophet ﷺ, he encouraged certain things. We know after every salat there are tasbihat, tahmidat, takbirat. That in itself is one form of wird. There is the recitation of Ayatul Kursi, right, every single day. There's the La ilaha illallah, considered to be the best form of wird, La ilaha illallah. And this is what the Sufis say as well. The best wird, the best form of dhikr is one of La ilaha illallah. And then some have a wird of salawat upon the Prophet ﷺ. Like for instance, you may read like the Dalail al-Khairat, or you may read the other books similar to that. There are a lot of books out there like that, with the wird of Imam Nawawi, wird al-Latif, a lot of different awrad which are there. So you do as much as you can, but just try to be constant in them in every single day. And that's all that I think I can say on that particular subject. Well, the benefit of the Khawatir al-Malakiyya is that an individual may be, let's say for instance, you're afflicted by the khatar al-nafsani, right? And your nafs is calling you to do something. You have a thought, right, which originates from your lust, or from your ego, right? And remember that the difference between the nafsani and the malaki, or one difference between the two, is that the nafsani is fixed, it's thabit, it comes and it stays with you, and your nafs, once it feels like it won't let it go until whatever desire it has is fulfilled, right? But then a khatar malaki comes, right, and disrupts that. Khatar malaki tells you, no, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. The benefit of it is that it gives you an opportunity to break away from the thought which is pushing you to do something harmful to yourself, right? And the nafsani is not always evil, sometimes it's good as well, but often the nafsani can be evil. But it's a stronger impulse than the khatam malaki. But the malaki, it comes into the human mind and actually can disrupt the any sort of evil things. And it is actually intensified through dhikr. Dhikr actually intensifies the khatam malaki. It actually gives it greater strength too. Right, so if you feel yourself struggling with yourself, do dhikr of Allah. Right? If you feel that, if a khatar shaytani comes to you as well, if you do dhikr, it chases the khatar shaytani away. Right? It weakens it, but it strengthens the khatar malaki. So that's the benefit of the khatar malaki, and that the khatar malaki is only for khair. It's only khair that comes through the khatar malaki. There's no shar that is implied through the khatar malaki, but it comes and goes, and so it gives us an opportunity to step back and look at ourselves and to make the proper judgment about what we truly want to do. Right, so I just try to summarize the question. The question fundamentally is the khatar nafsani just simply a subset of the khatar shaytani, the satanic thought or impulse. Because it would seem, right, that that this implies the doctrine of original sin as well. You know, that if individuals are already inclined towards sin, then that in itself, this kind of, I would say, sort of summarizes what you're saying, that in itself implies something similar to what Christians may be saying about the idea of original sin. An individual has to redeem themselves in some particular fashion. Now, I would say that no, that there is definitely some overlap between the khatar nafsani and shaytani, in that the nafs can be a source of evil. They can inspire evil, and and that, put it like this, the nafs sees its own good. Put it like that. The nafs sees its own good. My good, if I'm hungry, my good is in fulfilling my appetite and sort of gratifying my appetite. If I'm thirsty, my good is in, quenching my thirst. That's my good. Now, I may choose to do so through lawful means or unlawful means, right? I may do so through my own efforts or through usurping someone else's, right? If I'm just that hungry. Like when people are starving, right, and somebody throws a bunch of food in front of them, right, people, they jump on the food and they push one another out the way, right, because they're good. Everybody has the same thought, survival, right? Live, you want to live on, you see. So the nafs, can be, even though in its origin it's only looking out for its own good, it's self-interest involved here. Yeah, I'm looking out for my own interests, right? Right, and so we have to be just very suspect of the nafs because of that reason. Because at times we may not be able to discern if this is a charitable, is it going to be charitable or not, you see. So whereas the shaytani it's pure evil. It's like the shaytani is do evil, right? Do something, go and do it. You don't have to do it, but just go do it anyway because, like for instance, you're strong, right? That person's weak. Just go take his stuff, right? You understand? So in that sense, the nafsani is much more innocent than the shaytani. It's much more innocent sort of impulse than the shaytani. If anything, it's a natural sort of thing. But I wouldn't say that in itself it implies the idea of original sin, because according to my understanding, what I understand by original sin, of course, and anybody who's been Christian, who is Christian, was a Christian in the room, Brother Harun, can correct me on this issue about original sin, is that when Christians accept Jesus Christ, right, or when people accept Jesus Christ, they become redeemed. That doesn't mean that they no longer have an evil impulse. You understand? That doesn't mean so. It's, when they talk about original sin, they're talking about something different. It's like you're carrying the sins of your predecessors, in particular the sins of Adam and Eve, right, with you. And so because of their sin, you have to accept Christ, and through accepting Christ, you're redeemed of that. So every baby's born with it, right? Is that pretty much you? Yeah.
It gets a little messy, obviously, but
right, yeah.
Contradictory,
Right, yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, there are definitely some problems with it. Of course, well, we're Muslims, right? We find a lot of problems with it. But I think that as Muslims, we do need to understand that when we talk about the idea of human nature, that when the Prophet talked about, that every child is born upon the fitrah, that there are some scholars who say, of course, that's Islam. Everyone's born upon Islam. And then some people say that it means that every child is born with a natural inclination towards good. But that good, what does that mean? Is this ontological or is it moral good, you see? And I would say that the good, realistically, is an ontological good, right? It's not like, good in the sense that if I do this, it's going to be a benefit to myself and for other people, where I know right from wrong. I mean, children, they're not, as they grow, they're not naturally generous. Most of them are not, Say this, no, it's mine. We're stingy, right? It's mine. Right? So you're born upon fitrah in that sense. So if good, I'm not talking about good in the sense that I know that it's good for me to share, right? Or not to be stingy. So, no, you don't know that. See? So you're born in Islam. Upon Islam is probably, I would say, is a better understanding, meaning you're born upon the natural inclination to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believe in the higher power, right? To believe in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that particular natural process is disrupted depending on what other religious traditions your parents may have. For Abawahu Yahwidanihi, or Yunasiranihi, or Yumajisani, and so his parents make him transform it into a Christian or into a Jew or into a Zoroastrian, right? So as the hadith goes on afterwards, so which says it's talking about an aspect of aqidah as opposed to a matter of your behavior. Yeah, so like accountability, I mean, we have the age of tamyiz, usually around like 7, and then we have, generally scholars say age of puberty, like around 15, and then full adulthood is about like 20 years old. So it's developmental stages, and then a person is completely a human being at the age of 40. You reach your apex at 40, right? At least your mental, your spiritual, your capacity, or I guess you would say your full capacity of human intelligence. But we have this in Islam, and that in itself militates against any idea of original sin. And then this seems, it makes sense as well. So why would a baby be charged with sin? I mean, you're born into, once the baby is born and then dies, and where does the baby go? Goes to hell? Why? What did the baby do? I mean, the baby didn't do anything, right? So why does the baby go to hell, and the baby didn't even understand what heaven or anything else was? At least we assumed that they didn't, but they didn't do anything. So why are they going to hell? Because what they would have become. So if you're not baptized, for instance, where does the baby go? Right. So, and that in itself doesn't seem to be just, doesn't be fair. So Islam gives us these different stages. We learn that tamyiz and this aql, sanity is an important aspect of things as well. And in our normal, our own statute law teaches the same thing. When a person's insane, they're not judged the same way as a sane person is. A person is a minor is not judged the same way as an adult would be judged. And of course, we differ about what is the age of adulthood, right? But it's fundamentally the same principle, and it's the rational principle that is pretty universal in the world. So of course, that belief can become very problematic. But also when we think about Ghazali's own ideas about human development, human motivation. And if we go back to the fact that he highlighted that there are the 4 different sources of human activity, and he says, well, within us, that which is within us, 4 different sources, or based upon 4 different traits that we have. The one is the bestial trait, the one is the predatory trait, one is the satanic trait, and then the God trait, godly trait. And he talks about how the shahwa, or the sensitive appetite of the human being, they are the junud of shaitan. They are the forces of Satan, and that and those develop within us early first, right? And because they are the first to develop within us, by the time our intelligence, our aql, comes into full swing, they've already got a significant hold on us. But then the aql takes over, then they are the junud of malaika, they're the angelic forces, right? And they're the Hizbullah, they're God's party, and they're the angelic forces. And then this ma'araka, this battle begins between the satanic and angelic forces for the rest of our lives, if we are trying to become better people. So as aql becomes the major, most important, or what we call our intellectual appetite, becomes the most important aspect of our being at that point. So we're fighting against our sensitive appetite for the rest of our lives. So, right. What the question was, what is the difference between the different schools of Islam, such as the Maliki school, and the different schools of Sufism? Like, for instance, I say Tariqa, Shadiliya, Naqshbandiyya, the Naqshbandi, Shadiliya, Qadiriyya, the different popular and non-popular Sufi orders. That the difference between the Maliki school and, say, for instance, the Naqshbandi school is that the Maliki school is what we call a law school. It is a school of Islamic law. It is a particular interpretation of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ with regard to our moral code, our legal code. Actually, more of a legal code. And then the tariqah, or the order, a Sufi order, is a school of spirituality, right? So they're not the same. So you can't compare them. It's like apples and oranges. School of of spirituality is not the same as a school of law. A school of virtual ethics is not the same as a school of law, right? And so you find historically that, especially for the Malikis, that a significant number of Malikis have been Sufis, right, throughout Islamic history. If anything, some scholars have argued that many of the Malikis have been too Sufi. They've been hyper Sufi with regard to a lot of different ideas that they had adopted. But almost every single scholar who has been a member of a certain legal school had, at some time, once the different Sufi orders had arisen, had adopted a particular spiritual path. And so basically, again, this includes certain special type of urad that are to be recited, certain recommendations on how to deal with sinful action, like you have some, making vows, fast, special types of fasts that one should undertake, special ways of going about rectify one's disagreements with other people. So it's more so, and not just that, also motivation. What is it? Certain schools are, they differ with regard to what is the particular motivation which should be predominant in a person's actions. So for instance, one may say that when you do things, you should be based upon shukr, should be based upon gratitude. You should do things out of gratitude. Others may say you should do things out of fear. You should do things out of, you follow me? So different sort of impulses or so motivations are highlighted in different orders as well. So it's just, that's what the difference would be. They're apples and oranges if you compare the two. Well, I mean, okay, just so that people can hear the question. The question related to the comment about not cursing one's governors. There's some people who would say, okay, well, if that's the case, then we say things like, well, may Allah give them what they deserve, as opposed to cursing them, and God cursed them. I mean, those are two different things. I mean, say, may Allah give them what they deserve. I don't consider that to be a curse, because that could be something good. You understand? Because Allah decides what people deserve. You see, even though the intention of the person making the prayer may be something totally completely different. Now, if the prayer is intended as a curse, then perhaps Allah may answer it on the basis of your intention. And if that's the case, then He may give the person what they deserve, but also give you what you deserve as a result of your prayer. And what you might deserve is to be punished more by your governor. At least in the sight of God, not on the level of justice in society, of course. So yeah, people find many different ways to get around it. I mean, you find people do that about individuals. I've seen Muslims situations that they get into arguments, and they'll say, may Allah take His right from the person. They mean like they're asking Allah some musibah, some affliction come down upon them. That's what a lot of people, when they think of curse, they think of it as affliction, like that, like airplane crashing on your head, or something like that, get hit by a car, or somebody blowing your brains out, or you get some disease and you suffer. That's often what people think of. But the curse of Allah is not that. The curse of Allah is to have the light of guidance removed from your heart, right? So as long as we understand that, then I think we can argue that those type of prayers are not similar. So unless the individual means that, then yes, and Allah allows for people to express their grievances. Allah allows for people to even, we actually ask to tolerate people who actually say things like that against people when they're upset with them. لا يحب الله جهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم. That Allah doesn't like ill things to be said except for when it comes from one who's been wronged. Right, so there is a basis for that, and I mean there are scholars who have argued that it's okay to curse people who have already died. They've done like Yazid, and some like Hanbali scholars like Ibn Jawzi argued that, and certain like Suyuti and others, they would curse Yazid, Ibn Muawiyah, and whereas like the other Hanabila, their position was that, well, Suyuti wasn't Hanbali, but the other Hanabila was mainstream amongst the Hanbalis, is that you can't curse a specific person. That's something. La'an mu'ayyan is like muharram. That's but la'an mutlaq, and an unqualified curse is fine. to may Allah curse all tyrants, right? That's fine. May Allah curse all of those people who do riba, right? I mean, there's a hadith about this stuff. May Allah curse the man who acts like a woman, the woman acts like a man. We find a hadith like that. It's like it's mutlaq, we call, the Prophet didn't say somebody specific, right? But the category of person, if the category exists, then scholars have allowed that. But the Prophet said, La mu'ab'ath la'ana, I have not been sent as one to curse. Innama bu'ithu da'iyan wa rahma, I have been sent only as an inviter and as a mercy. Right? So when he was asked to curse the people of Ta'if and other people, and the Prophet, no, I haven't, and he did the opposite. May Allah forgive them because they don't know. And and what does the curse really do? And realistically, does it help you? I don't think it really does. It may make you feel good just to do it, but in the larger scheme of things, it doesn't really help most people, who do so. All right? Ready for a break? Class is over, right? Inshallah. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين السلام عليكم